Greetings and welcome to another Warhammer 40,000 kill team video. Today I'm going over factions that I think will be buffed and nerfed based on the next balanced data slate, going off of the stats that we've just released. But before we get into things, please remember to like and subscribe as well as comment. Let me know what you thought of this video. Do you agree or disagree, and what would you like to see? And remember, I've got a Discord you can check out in the episode description for free, as well as an affiliate link to Element Games, and as well as a Patreon if you want to give me some more support. But yeah, this video is a bit delayed because I was waiting on the stats. You know, I've had a lot of questions, people asking me like, you know, what would you do about X team? They're a problem or they need a buff. And based on the success of last time's videos, instead of splitting them into two videos, I'm just combining it all into one. So what I'm going to do is try and predict what Games Workshop are going to do for the next balanced data slate, which should drop this week, next week, sometime in March. Although I wouldn't be surprised if they delayed it to April. But I expect it to come in March, just based on tradition, because we get one every 3 months. But yeah, I'll be trying to basically guess stuff, you know, from the stats, considering how accurate I was last time. So, you know, it just makes the conspiracy people think that I have some magic direct line to Games Workshop and they just go like, tell us what you think, John, and they'll go do X, because that's not how it happens at all. But anyway, so let's get into it. I'll try and keep this short, you know, because some people said 23 minutes is too long for a video, so let's try and go below that. So yeah, first things first, let's look at the stats, right? So as you can see on screen, these are the Q1 2023 stats for January and February, because we're not using December data because GW said they weren't in the last Metal Watch. And on the normal results, you can see Elucidian, Starstriders, Gellerpox infected, Imperial Navy breaches, and technically Hand of the Archon, but they have like hardly any players above 55%. And remember, GW was looking for 45 to 55%. Anything above 55% is too strong. And you can see Void Dancer Troupe on 55, Legionary on 55, Corsairs on 55, and Blooded on 55. And another thing we need to mention is our stats are probably lower than GW's because we rate draws as half a point instead of 1. So if something's borderline for us or close, then it's usually higher on the GW side. But also when it comes to GT Plus results, so these are tournaments with 4 more rounds and 16 or more players, I believe GW pay more attention to these results as well. So you can see with 64% Elucidian Starstriders, Gellerpox infected, Void Dancer Troupe with 61%, then you've got Imperial Navy breaches and Blooded, right? And then Legionary are still borderline, but Vet Guard become an interesting issue. So before going into kill teams that will get buffed or nerfed, I want to predict a general rule. So if you've noticed with the last 2 or 3 balanced data slates, every time we've got a new balanced data slate, we've got a new general rules change. So with the first one, it limited chain activating. Instead of being like unlimited, you can only do it twice. So you can only basically group activate 2 models. During your activation, you can't do 3 or 4. Then the next one was grenades. And the last one said you can't modify a movement characteristic below 2 white, right? So you still have to pay the cost for traversing, so it'd go down to white, but you can't be modified to 2 white or, well, to 1 white or no white. So for this one, I'm predicting damage negation. So I think something's going to happen to damage negation because it needs to. I did a whole video on it, which you can check out in the episode description below. And effectively, damage negation is too strong because -1 damage is too good, because in 40k you have a limited number of wounds and the stuff with big wounds takes tons of damage, whereas in kill team everything's more granular, so -1 on every attack is huge. So what I think will happen is something will happen to damage negation, and if I had my way, compared to because I've had a lot of time to think after my video, I would have damage negation from ploys capped to 3 damage minimum. So what does that mean? Basically, if a ploy gave you -1 damage, it's only to a minimum of 3 instead of to a minimum of 2 or 0. Because as I said, 3 damage is actually really important for the game, and it gatekeeps a lot of kill teams in the game, right? So doing that would help so much. It would help Crew, Phobos, so many teams, and it would just bring down the teams that rely on damage negation quite a bit. And as you can see, like Elucidian Starstriders have a damage negation strategic ploy. Gellerpox effectively have built-in damage negation. And then Imperial Navy Breachers, they have a damage negation ploy, as well as Legionary, you know, and also can't forget Intercession. But those first 3 teams I've mentioned, well, first 4, are all in the above 55%, right? So that would be a good help. And the reason I say ploys, because when I was looking back at my video, I was like, you know, individual fighters, individual operatives, they get hurt too hard by this because that's their defining thing. So I was like, you know, the Painbringer, the Thug, even the Guardsman guy who's like, I think he's like the Trench Sweeper who gets -1 damage. I think it's fine on a single operative basis. The only problem, as I said in the video, when it's kill team wide. So if you only hit ploys, that future-proofs ploys, but also it keeps unique operatives, lets them be unique. Although personally, I expect if GW do something about damage negation, it will affect everyone, not just individual operatives. So it's kind of give and take. I mean, while I would hate the Painbringer and stuff to lose their unique, minus damage to a minimum of 1, I think for the health of the game, it would be better. But personally, if ploys were capped to a minimum of 3 damage, it would actually completely fix stuff like the Elucidian Starstrider ploy, because it would mean you're always doing a minimum of 3 damage to them, so it weakens the nature of that damage, and it just helps so much. So I hope something for that. Now, coming on kill teams, I'll do kill teams that will be buffed. I mean, nerfed. Nerfed first, then buffed, all right? Let's start with the Elucidian Starstriders. So this kill team has kind of, I would say, done a Hunterclade, where Hunterclade were forming terribly and then got this crazy set of buffs, went under the radar for a while and then started dominating the game and then got nerfed back down, although they're still really good. And effectively the same thing has happened to the Elucidian Starstriders. They were okay, then they got Omega buffed, and now they've been dominating the game. The first way I would change them is it's basically reverting a lot of their changes, and the reason I'm going quite hard on them is because they're near 70% for 2 months in a row, and on average are near 65%, which is not good, no matter how you phrase it. And if you're a kill team or any faction doing that highly, you need a big nerf, right? So obviously the first one is the support assets, all of them going back to hitting on 4s, apart from the Lance. The Lance hitting on 3s is fine, because you effectively can only use it twice per game, and it gives them something to do against elite teams, right? The fact they all hit on 3s was crazy, and I don't know how that got pushed through, right? But only the Lance hitting on 3s, that'd be a good change. Now, I won't mention anything about Undaunted Explorers, because that's their damage negation ploy. I'm assuming GW is doing that general match play damage negation change, so that's fine, because otherwise, if GW leave damage negation alone, Undaunted Explorers needs to like change in some way. Maybe like only work once per turn instead of every time you're activated, like every time you're fought at, because it turns like them into tanks for really weird reasons. So, because it would have to go up to like 2 CP flat. So damage negation would fix that, because you'd always be doing minimum 3 damage to that. And then the Elect 2 Master, I would probably remove the 0 AP on its actions, because once again, the win rate is way too high. Just remove them, so it has to pay action points again, because I think the kill team overall has been helped too much by the crit ops. So the Elect 2 Maester going down a bit and losing some efficiency is fine in my book. He becomes a really defensive piece, but I think making him 0 AP was too strong based on the stats. And then finally for the Voidsman, with the Rotor Cannon, I would remove Relentless and give it Ceaseless. So you still reroll 1s, but you no longer reroll every dice. Because I think them going, well, the Navy Breachers get Relentless on their gun. Why don't we do that here? So instead of making 2 things broken, let's just give it Ceaseless, right? Ceaseless would be fine on the Rotor Cannon. They have enough range for it anyway. And I think with those changes, they'd be fine. I know like the Elucidian Starstrider players would go, no, they're dead. I'd be like, yeah, they wouldn't be broken. They'd still be good, but they'd definitely come down to solid A instead of like S tier where they are now. For the Gellerpox infected, it's been interesting because I've been talking to a lot of Gellerpox infected players, and at first they were like, oh, the change to Techno Cursor was horrible, and now they're like, oh yeah, we don't even notice it. So the issue is the command point regeneration and durability. So I think there's 3 easy ways to balance this kill team, because effectively out of 6, for 5 months out of 6, they've been having an above 60% win rate, which is insane. So the way I would change stuff is Rust Emanations as CP 1+, just like, you know, Drawn to the Hum, because Rust Emanations is crazy strong. So at least they can't, if they're popping that and Drawn to the Hum, they're just not popping them both every turn. I would also cap Vulgar Fryspawn his command point regeneration just to once per game. Like, have it once per game, because not only would it mean you only get 1 free command point from him instead of potentially 4, it would also actually be a buff to Gellerpox infected players, because now they wouldn't pick Recon Dash every time in the scouting phase. So they would actually get some refreshment to their play. And then the other change I would make is make the whole team damage negation on a 6-up, because they're way too good once they get in. And it's like you have a turning point to deal with them. Once they're in your face, it's game over. Just make them all on a 6-up. And, you know, Gellerpox infected players will go, that's ridiculous. It's not like we have a lot of wounds. So effectively, with the 6-up damage negation, 6-up DPR, damage prevention roll, with 18 wounds, you get 21 wounds. So it's down from 24 on average with the 5-up DPR. And I think, you know what? When you've got 4 guys with 18 wounds, effectively 21 wounds with a 6-up DPR, I think that's fine. I think that would help them a lot. They'd still be good, you know, once again, and it would actually give you a chance to fight them instead of basically going, oh, I can't actually melee you at all because I'm -1 to hit, and any damage I do into you, some of it can just bounce up because a 5-up is just way too swingy in general. So I think just making them all a 6-up DPR, their leader only gets 1 free command point a game, and Rust Emanations is CP 1+, that's fine. I think that this team would be okay. Now we go into Imperial Navy Breachers, a team that should have been hit a long time ago, whose Discord's chats and players eternally decree that this team is balanced, despite, you know, almost getting a 60% win rate every month. How do you fix Imperial Navy Breachers? So first thing, if we get a damage negation thing, then Brace is fine, right? The biggest issue with Brace is it makes them 8 wounds with stims, and then they're -1 damage to a minimum of 2. So if they're capped to a minimum of 3, all of a sudden all the teams that do 3 damage just go, oh, this is great. Instead of needing 4 attacks to kill you, I only need 3 attacks, which changes so much, right? So I think that would help. I would make Close Assault CP 1+. So Close Assault is when you fight within blue, so shoot or fight in combat. If you get 2 or more successes, you can change a miss into a hit. Because what you can do is if you roll 4 dice, you get 2 hits, you can reroll 1 of them and then change another one into a hit. So, and you can even change reroll dice that have failed into a hit. So just making that CP 1+ would help a lot, because once again, you've got a toned down Brace, and then that eats a lot into them. Then I would also change Blitz, because Blitz in its current state is dumb, right? Blitz, basically, if you activate first, and you're the first operative to activate, you get to retain a crit and a hit. If you're the first operative to activate and not do that action, then you just retain a hit. And then they FAQ'd it, so if you hit someone with a blast attack, or like a fusillade attack, you would retain a crit and a hit on every attack. So the way to fix it is like some kind of rewrite. Like, you should never be able to retain a crit and a hit. Rewrite it so you can only retain a crit or a hit, not both. And probably make that 2 CP, right? And people may go, that's extreme. And I'm like, that's what a worthy cause got. You know, like basically a worthy cause went to 2 CP and then once per game. So even like, because even if you made Blitz 2 CP and once per game, you only need Blitz to go off once. Because not only can you combine Blitz to retain a crit and a hit, like you do Blitz, you retain a crit and a hit. If you're within blue because of attack order, you reroll 1 or both dice, and then you have Close Assault. So you could reroll 2 dice, get a hit, and turn that miss into a hit as well. It's way too much dice control, and it's insane with the FAQ. And then I think if they wanted to go a little bit further, you could make stims cost 2 EP. But I think with the change to damage negation, if it's capped at 3, you can leave stims alone. Because it's mainly the ploys that kind of break this team. So once you tone that down a lot, they're a lot better. And Because you can go like, okay, we've hit, you know, Brace has already been hit. We've hit Close Assault and Blitz. Then we can just wait and see. But if they wanted to go a little bit further, hitting stims, because 1 equipment point for 1 wound is dumb. And if people said like, well, people say, oh, if stims are rubbish, I won't take stims. And then like, you could just spam stun grenades. Even stims at 2 EP would still be good. So I think that would be fair considering how hard the other top teams have been hit. Now we've got Void Dancer Troupe. So Void Dancer Troupe are overperforming on no matter what fact you look at. And I would say the way, as I've been saying for months, is they don't get any extra CP for completing their say-defs. Don't need any of that. And you just make the support grip 2 equipment points, or 3 equipment points, or 4 equipment points. Basically, as long as it's not 1 equipment point, then it's fine. And that team is fine. It needs a rewrite, but because the main issue last Dataslate, they made Domino Field CP1+. And then it's like, oh, this would be good if everyone didn't get +1 CP. And then they get another CP from completing their say-defs. So, well, you know, getting 4 say-def points. So it's kind of like, we've nerfed them. It's like, have you? It's like, yeah. Aren't you forgetting something? No, what could be with what's there to forget? But basically you do that and the team's fine. Like the reason I said 4 equipment points for the support grip is so if you pick 2 pieces of equipment with that's 3 each, and then you pick 1 that's 4, you have no spare equipment points. But you make the support grip basically no longer a free auto take, because you would still take it, but now it's the cost of a prismatic grenade, you know, like a Wraithbone Talisman and gun upgrade. Just make those players actually think, and it's fine. The last team, according to the stats, remember this is all according to the stats is Blooded. So I brought this up in the stats video. If we nerfed Pathfinders, you know, like in general, we got Pathfinders nerfed because they were overperforming in open boards. You need to do the same to Blooded, even if they're probably only overperforming on Into the Dark, because, you know, it's literally Pathfinders. Like, Pathfinders can't really play Into the Dark, but have been nerfed because of open board power, and now they kind of don't do great on both, but it's more so they lost more power Into the Dark. So, you know, toning down Blooded for Into the Dark and making them unintentionally a walkover on open boards is, you know, the price we have to pay for fairness and balance, you know? Just because we like one faction and dislike another doesn't mean the one we like can be immune to balance changes. But the only issue is I have no idea how to balance Blooded. Like, I can't think of anything good that I could do without destroying the team on open play, but they are overperforming on Into the Dark. And I know it's weird, but I've been actually thinking about this for days, and I can't think what you would do to tone them down for Into the Dark. Like, it would have to be something crazy. So this is really weird where I'm going to just have to pass the suggestions to you guys for Blooded, because once again, I have no idea. Like, well, what could you do? Take away, limit them to 1 gunner? Or don't let them generate a Blooded token during turning point 1? So they start generating a free Blooded token from turning point 2? I don't know. It's really tough because they have definitely been overbuffed by crit ops, but also because of Into the Dark. But this is an Into the Dark season, so they should be toned down for that, even if it neuters them for open boards. Because, you know, in my opinion, Into the Dark and open should be separate, but we're forced to play them together. And as a result, I have no idea how to touch Blooded. Like, I generally, I don't know, take away an operative or 2? I don't know. It's really weird. So yeah, it's up to you guys on that, which is probably going to be interesting and also scary. All right, so now let's go into teams that should be buffed. There are teams people want me to mention about being nerfed, but we're looking at the stats, and I'm not going to get into Legionary because they're technically covered by the damage negation change. So teams that need to be buffed. So the underperforming teams are technically Kasrkin, but I'm looking at teams that are way below 40%. Like basically below 40%. Because if they're too close to 45, I think for GW stats, they'll be fine. So that means Kasrkin are probably fine in terms of they're just hitting 45. Not so much, even on GT Plus, they're only like a few % off. What is the thing, right? So GW playtesters can be quite weird, you know? a lot of playtesters will publicly tell you they're playtesters, and you know, if you follow the scene enough, you can figure out who playtesters are. But basically, it's like the oracles for Age of Sigmar. You, and for 40k, you watch what they do, watch what they play, and watch what they build, and generally it will mysteriously align up with what happens in balanced Dataslate changes. So we might get a Kasrkin buff, and for the sake of that alone, I will mention a Kasrkin buff, although I don't believe it will happen. So this is rumor buff, but all I would do to Kasrkin is, first, you gain elite points. You gain 1 elite point for every operative you kill with more than 10 wounds, because they're an elite operative, right? And then also you get an elite point for completing a mission action. From that, I would then open up elite points. So you can spend 2 elite points to do a free dash during your activation. So like any point during your activation, spend 2 elite points to do a dash. And then you could spend like 2 to 4 elite points to group activate 2 different operatives, you know? Maybe give a range bonus, or like no range bonus, but make it cost 4 elite points. And 2 elite points to do a mission action for 1 AP less, which basically lets you do a mission action for free. And say like you can only do 1 of those per turn, right? So you're foregoing your, maybe let it stack with the ability to modify your dice, but so you can't just do, I'll do a free dash, I'll group activate and do a free mission action. Make elite points represent them being elite operatives instead of making elite points, I have more gun. And I think that's all they need, right? That would help a lot. It would give them a nice buff, it'd give them more dimensions to play, make them a more interesting faction. But I don't think this will happen. I'm just saying Kasrkin for the sake of Kasrkin. Let's go into Hierotek Circle. Hierotek Circle are a horribly performing kill team, regularly scoring around 25% every month. And unfortunately, as I said in the review, they are a kill team that is just like, I feel really bad for the devs because they got given these models which, while looking great, just aren't great for the game, right? So my ways to fix Hierotek Circle, I said it before, you can swap the plasma sight, so you can swap 1 plasma sight each for an immortal or death mark. So you would end up dropping both plasma sights to take 2 immortals, but that would help the team overall. You make the Despotek's ability, actually, I originally said you'd make the Despotek's ability 0 AP, make the Despotek free APL, so he can actually, because what this team lacks is APL, so giving a model free APL is huge, and then you make the Apprentek hit on freeze and shooting and free APL. And I think that would actually do so much for the team. Yes, you probably would basically take 5 immortal, no, 7 immortals and a leader. But if your Apprentek is actually decent, you take the Despotek, who'd be free APL, the Apprentek, who's free APL, then 5 immortals or 4 immortals and Death Mark, and you actually have a threatening team with effectively 19 APL, which is way better than where they are at the moment. Is it 19? Yes, 19. So that helps so much, and I think they desperately need that. It probably wouldn't push them that far up because, as I said, they're a weird team that just don't fit kill team, if that makes sense, because of the composition of what the devs had to use. But at least, you keep the box legal so people can build a team out of the box, but they effectively have to buy some more immortals to make the team functional, which I think is okay. And I think with those changes, Hierotek would be good. So let's go. Let's talk about Phobos strike team. So Phobos, I think actually, if this damage negation change comes through, they're fine. Because, with their latest ploy, they're balanced on their bolt guns and they don't have to stay still. They actually become decent because now they're like, yes, if they force through crits, they're doing 4 damage. But now they don't have to rely on crits. They can go, I've still rolled normal damage. My guns aren't useless. And then the other thing I would change, during their activation, they can do the first, a mission action for -1 action point to a minimum of 0. So it won't affect their ability to, change orders and stuff. And, people are saying, TAC Ops actually use less action points. But I'm like, loot and secure, where they have to spend action points to capture or secure the point. That they do that for free. it actually makes them really good at infiltration, because infiltration has a lot of tac ops that require mission actions, and it allows these guys just to move up and do that for free. I think that helps so much and would make this team so good, and in a thematic way, because you've got Legionary, who are tough yet all independent characters, Intercession, who are just durable tanks, and it would allow the Phobos to be the sneaky Spec Ops elite team. So it would allow them to occupy a different mechanic, where instead of just, you know, being super oppressive or super durable, they can just control the board space and are really good at completing mission actions, because they would effectively be pseudo 4 APL on missions with mission actions, which I think that would be great. The only teams that are left to mention, technically Farstalker Kinband because of their performance, but I think they would be fine with the damage negation change. And Commandos are really weird. They're just borderline. They're like on the edge. They, as I said, even in the last month, they were like around 41%, but they won like 5 events and they podiumed really well. So I think they're just on the edge of being weak, but they really enjoy the rise into the dark. But overall, those are my changes. So once again, I'd quickly summarize. The teams I would nerf would be Elucidian Starstriders, Gellerpox Infected, Void Dancer Troupe, and Imperial Navy Breaches, and then something for Blooded. Remember, it's all based off the stats. It's all the stats. It's not me. It's just the stats. This is not my personal opinion. Otherwise, I'd hit so much more. And then teams that would be buffed. Maybe Kasrkin, that's like a maybe. Then a Hierotek Circle, Phobos Strike Team. Yeah, just those two. And I think with the damage negation change as a global change, if GW do that, it would fix so much, because the damage negation thing would bump up so many teams. It would just future-proof the game. And you know, it should bring some parity, because it's like, well, Hierotek are just a dysfunctional team. Phobos are just mainly knocked back by their damage output. And a lot of the overperforming teams have some form of damage negation, right? That's what I assume they would hit. I will go into a little bit of dream sequencing. Like, the only other thing I would probably do is make the Vet Guard Spotter not work if you're behind heavy cover. And Intercession, I would make, what do you call it? Durable and Rapid both cost 2 choices, so you can't select. They'd basically be selected on their own. Not because Intercession are dominating via their win rate, but they are literally the most successful team in the game. They have the most podiums, most tournament wins. It's just that. But I don't think those two will happen. That's what I would do if I was allowed the power to change more. But I hope that made sense, because that's why, you know, I did all this. But once again, I'm just guessing. Don't know if I'm right. I will say, based on track record, I have been right, and that's because I'm amazingly psychic. So that's why. Because if I was a playtester, I would literally not be allowed to say any of that to you. So yeah, no inner workings. What? Don't worry, James Workshop. You'll be fine. Anyway, that's pretty much it from today. Please remember to like and subscribe, as well as comment. Let me know what you thought of this video. Do you agree or disagree? Let me know what you think. Remember, it's based off of the stats. Keep saying this is off of the stats, not a personal thing. But I'd be really interested to see what you guys would do about Blooded, because I have no idea. And remember, I've got a Discord you can check out in the episode description below, as well as an affiliate link to Element Games if you want to give me some more support, as well as a Patreon if you want to give me some more support. And I'll quickly thank my patrons. So for my Adepts of the Crit, I have Screech, Sam, Robin, Nick, Kenzie, John Thomas, Eric, Captain Murder, Daniel, Dad of Goldens, Average Joe 27, Arthur, and then for my Veterans of the Crit, I have Samja. So thank you so much. Your support really means a lot to me and helps support the channel out. But yeah, this is pretty much it for me today. This should be a packed week, because I have a podcast coming out as well. I have another battle report coming out, which is Hand of the Archon versus Vet Guard, so that should be interesting. And it's also technically recording today on the Sunday. This is 5 years I've been a content creator since I started my blog, so it's been fun. You told me 5 years ago I'd be here now in front of a lovely non-green screen. Well, you know, it's been wild. I'm really happy like how it turned out, considering I was just like, I'll just post my random thoughts online. I don't think people will pay much attention to me. Anyway, I really appreciate all the support, especially if I've just hit over 7,000 subscribers on YouTube. It really means a lot to me. But I hope you enjoy this video. It's mostly for fun. And please remember, it's not personal. It's literally just based off the stats. Please don't get angry. And until next time, no matter what the stats say, remember, there's always a chance to get along and have fun, as long as you can roll a crit.